Bienvenido a Historias en la Penumbra. En este territorio de medias luces, donde la claridad apenas alcanza, las historias más terroríficas surgen lentamente desde la oscuridad. Aquí, los susurros del miedo narran relatos capaces de congelar tu sangre y acelerar tu pulso hasta el límite. Cada narración te conducirá a un laberinto oscuro, plagado de secretos macabros y terrores insondables. Prepárate para adentrarte en un mundo donde la realidad se difumina y el miedo es la única certeza que queda. The sanity-shredding moment arrived without fanfare. Gossamer integers simply materialized above the crowns of strangers, hovering like spectral diadems. I blinked, rubbed furiously at my eyes. Futile rituals against the sudden, inexplicable presence of these luminous digits that swam, unwavering, in my field of vision. It began on a Tuesday, utterly mundane until it wasn't. Pressed into the metallic gut of the morning train, a flicker caught my eye, a soft cyan glow coalescing above the woman beside me. As my gaze sharpened, the light resolved into a number. 43. Bewilderment prickled. Too much caffeine, sleep deprivation. But then, another shimmer. 78. Floated serenely above a suited man, lost in his phone's sterile light. And above a youth whose hair blazed cerulean. 16. A chilling inventory revealed every soul in the carriage wore a number. Every soul but mine. Disembarking felt like surfacing from murky depths, my thoughts turbulent. The 2 blocks to the office became a gauntlet of floating figures, single digits, sprawling hundreds, mostly cyan, yet some shone citrine, others emerald, and a rare few pulsed a deep, unsettling vermilion. By the time I slumped into my chair, the conviction of a psychic fracture was nearly absolute. Call in sick, seek urgent counsel. Yet, surveying my colleagues, each crowned with their own persistent cipher, a peculiar stillness descended. If this was madness, it possessed an unnerving coherence. I defaulted to my training, data analysis. A logbook became my confidant, charting numerals against observations, fleeting expressions, overheard snippets, the cadence of footfalls. Initially, chaos reigned. No discernible link to age, status, or outward demeanor emerged. But days bled into weeks, revealing a subtle dynamism. The numbers breathed. They shifted, mostly by increments, yet sometimes with startling velocity. My manager's figure ebbed from 89 to 88 across 7 days. My desk mates vaulted from 32 to 45 overnight. The epiphany struck nearly a fortnight into this altered reality, over lunch with my closest friend, Lena. Her number, 62, held steady as she recounted the bitter details of her recent separation. As venom laced her words about her ex, I watched it dip, 61. Then, shifting topic to a nascent passion, a pottery class, it nudged back, 62s. Clarity bloomed, sudden and sharp. These weren't arbitrary tags. They were barometers of the soul, metrics measuring, something akin to inner resonance, contentment, vitality. A dip signaled distress or stagnation. A rise spoke of joy, purpose. The precise algorithm remained elusive, but the principle felt undeniable. Possessed of this key, the world rearranged itself before my eyes. Hidden currents became visible. Elias, the man who panhandled near the station, always offering a fragmented blessing, bore a steadfast 72, eclipsing many of the impeccably dressed professionals who hurried past, faces grim. Chloe, the barista whose smile seemed painted on, carried a 23 that whispered a truth counter to her effervescent greetings. An obsession took root. I became a voyeur of vitality, deciphering the ebb and flow. Numerals plummeted with breakups, soared with promotions. I witnessed a woman's 40 leap to 65 when a stranger retrieved her scattered groceries, a simple kindness echoing in the ethereal digits. But illumination carried weight. What was my role in this silent spectacle? Was I merely an observer, or did this sight demand intervention when a number dwindled towards some unseen precipice? The universe answered about a month after the phenomenon began. Walking home under the bruised twilight sky, I saw him. A young man folded onto a park bench, shoulders slumped in utter defeat. Above him, a number pulsed a raw, angry crimson. 3. The lowest I had ever witnessed. An internal siren wailed. Discarding ingrained urban reticence, I approached. "Hey," I offered, aiming for casual warmth. "Everything all right?" He startled, eyes wide. Yeah, fine." I sat beside him, ignoring the silent scream of social protocol. "You sure? You look like you're carrying something heavy." Silence stretched, and I saw his numeral flicker precariously between 2 and 3. Then, a torrent unleashed. Lost job, crushing debt, a suffocating sense of worthlessness. He spoke, and I listened, truly listened, my gaze fixed on that fragile number, terrified it might extinguish entirely, though the consequence remained terrifyingly unknown. But a quiet miracle unfolded. As he vented his despair, as I offered tentative words of solace, validation, his number began a slow, hesitant ascent. From 3 to 4, 5, climbing steadily. By the time his narrative found a calmer shore, it rested at 15. Still perilously low, yet the alarming crimson had softened. "Thanks," he murmured, rising. "I don't know why, but I feel lighter, like maybe it's not completely hopeless." Watching him walk away, his 15 holding firm, I felt a profound mingling of relief and awe. I had shifted something. A small nudge, perhaps, but tangible. From that night, my path seemed clear. I became a quiet tender of these invisible flames. Direct confrontation was rare. More often, it was the subtle gesture, paying for the coffee of the person behind me, offering a specific, genuine compliment to a colleague, dedicating hours at a local shelter. With each act, I'd watch for the subtle rise, the slight brightening of a digit, confirmation of a ripple sent outwards. It wasn't a panacea. There were limits, painful ones. I watched, impotent, as my Aunt Clara's number descended gracefully alongside her, battle with illness, settling at a tranquil 5 before she slipped away. I saw dreams fracture, relationships dissolve, the numerical scars starkly visible. And always the insistent question, why me? Why this solitary perception? A gift? A burden? Some cosmic clerical error? No answers came, only the deepening gravity of this strange stewardship. Months unfurled, and I noticed another transformation within myself. Empathy, once abstract, became visceral. I started recognizing the precursors to a falling number, even without the visual cue. The tightening around the eyes, the forced brightness in a voice, the subtle drag in posture. I learned to listen beneath the surface, to connect beyond pleasantries. My relationships gained depth. Paradoxically, this heightened emotional intelligence translated into professional success. I became a more intuitive colleague, a more perceptive leader. A quiet sense of fulfillment began to bloom. Nearly a year after the ciphers first imposed themselves upon my sight, I caught my reflection in a shop window and froze. There, shimmering softly above my own head, was a number, 89, a strong, steady Kayan. In that instant, understanding dawned. The numbers weren't a curse, nor a descent into delusion. They were a lesson, a demanding, immersive tutorial in empathy, interconnectedness, the profound weight of human exchange. The numbers persist. I continue my quiet interventions, nudging digits upward where I can. But now, I act with the knowledge that we are all threads in a vast, intricate tapestry. Every kindness resonates. Every moment of authentic connection sends tremors through the unseen fabric. Whether these spectral figures will ever fade, or if another soul shares this strange vision, remains unknown. Yet, this much is certain. Even if my sight returned to normalcy tomorrow, my course is set. The numbers unveiled a fundamental truth. We are architects of each other's inner worlds. Every interaction, however fleeting, holds the potential to lift or diminish that invisible measure of a soul's well-being. And ultimately, isn't that the crux of it all? Not merely chasing our own fleeting contentment, but actively cultivating the flourishing of those around us. So, the next time you meet another's gaze, remember, you possess the power to alter their unseen number. Make it count. A smear of weak neon bled against the oppressive dark. The diner's promise miles distant on this forgotten artery of tarmac. Hours blurred behind the wheel, asphalt spooling endlessly, my vision gritty with fatigue. Then, etched against the roadside gloom, a solitary shape, thumb starkly raised. A flicker of caution, warred with exhaustion. Stopping felt wrong, yet driving on felt worse. A decision made in weariness, unknowingly stepping across a threshold into terror. My sedan sighed to a halt beside him. Gaunt frame, a tangle of beard clinging to his jawline, clothes whispering tales of hard miles. The window descended, admitting a rank cloud. Stale perspiration, cheap tobacco. Destination? My voice aimed for nonchalance, missed. His gaze, restless as trapped birds, finally landed on mine. A little further on, named Silas. A dissonant chord struck within me, a warning hum ignored. The lateness, the fatigue, the raw isolation of the spot. Abandoning him felt like a betrayal I couldn't stomach. All right, get in. A click of the lock. I'm Leo. Silas folded himself into the passenger seat, a worn backpack hugged fiercely to his ribs. We merged back into the river of highway, the silence amplifying the car's hum. I caught the tremor in his hands, knuckles white on the backpack straps. Everything all right? A sideways glance, a sharp, unconvincing nod. Bit cold is all. The lie hung thin in the air. I let it be. Miles dissolved under the tires, each one layering the tension thicker, palpable as humidity. Regret began its insidious creep. So, I ventured, desperate to puncture the quiet, what has you traveling at this hour? Silas went rigid. Just needed a change of scenery. Getting away. From? He offered only the road ahead, his fingers tapping a frantic, a rhythmic beat against the canvas pack. His eyes kept flicking to the mirror, scanning the darkness behind us. A predator's unease. I was formulating an exit strategy, a polite ejection at the next town's edge, when his voice sliced through the quiet, strained thin. You have to help me. A ragged whisper. They're hunting me. Ice traced my vertebrae. Who? His eyes were huge, stark terror blooming within them. The ones I robbed. Didn't want to, swear it, just pushed too far. But they know, they won't stop until I'm gone. My grip clenched the steering wheel. Robbed of what? He fumbled with the zipper on his pack, pulling it open just enough. A flash of banded currency, the cold glint of gemstones. My pulse hammered against my ribs. God Almighty, I breathed. You brought that here, in my car? Forgive me, Silas stammered, words tumbling over each other. No choice, nowhere else. Just get me clear of them, please. As if summoned by his fear, twin beams ignited in the rear view, swelling with predatory speed. No, 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 Silas groaned, a low sound of utter despair. They're here. They've found us. Instinct slammed my foot down. The engine whined in protest. What abyss had I stumbled into? The lights behind us resolved into the brutal geometry of a heavy SUV, closing fast. Who are they, Silas? I yelled, wrestling the wheel through a sharp bend. Dangerous, he choked out. Truly dangerous. The kind who erase inconvenient truths, permanently. It clung to our bumper, blinding high beams scouring the interior, silhouetting two indistinct forms within. Then, impact. A violent shove sent the car slewing sideways, tires screaming. I fought the skid, heart hammering. Silas cried out, shielding his backpack as if it were a child. What in God's name do they want? I shouted over the engine's roar. Everything, Silas replied, his voice devoid of hope. The cash, the stones, and my life. A second impact, harder, crumpling metal. We were outmatched, outgunned. Ahead, a dark slash in the roadside trees, an unpaved track. Impulse took over. I wrenched the wheel, launching us off the highway onto rutted earth. Branches clawed at the glass as we plunged into the arboreal dark. Behind, the behemoth SUV crashed through the undergrowth, its bulk barely contained by the trees. My old car groaned, pushed to its breaking point. Please, hold together. The car's a beacon, I gasped, thoughts racing. We lose it now. Silas nodded, his face a pale mask in the intermittent moonlight slicing through the canopy. A small clearing materialized ahead. I aimed for it, killing the lights. We erupted into the space, brakes locking, the car spinning to a halt in a shower of dirt and leaves. Out, dragging Silas with me. Move, I hissed, shoving him toward the thick tangle of brush bordering the clearing. We crashed into the black embrace of the woods, thorns snagging fabric, unseen roots grasping at our ankles. Behind us, the relentless crunch and snap of the pursuing SUV. We ran, lungs searing, the sounds of the hunt gradually receding, until sheer exhaustion threatened to buckle my knees. Then, looming from the gloom, the skeletal frame of an ancient barn. Here, I wheezed, wrenching at a warped, heavy door. We tumbled inside, into absolute darkness, thick with the scent of decay. Old hay, oxidizing iron. Groping our way to a far corner, we collapsed, straining to muffle our ragged breaths. Time stretched, measured in heartbeats. Every groan of the old structure, every whisper of wind outside, was a fresh stab of terror. How did I end up here? I'm sorry, Silas breathed beside me in the suffocating dark. Never intended any of this. Anger, sharp and hot, pierced through my fear. I turned towards his unseen shape. What is this, Silas? The full story. I think I've earned that much. A long silence pulsed between us, then a heavy sigh. I worked for them, the hunters, part of a syndicate, sophisticated crime. I was small time, a courier, errand boy. But my eyes, they saw too much. A cold dread seeped into me. Saw what? Things that fracture a soul, he murmured, the words barely forming. Eliminations, cruelty beyond imagining. They're inhuman. I had to get out, but escape wasn't an option, not with the knowledge I carried. So I took leverage, the cash, the gems, but also papers, ledgers, photos, proof. Nausea churned in my gut, and led them straight to us. He seemed to shrink beside me. Forgive me, this burden, I never meant for you to carry it. Before I could frame a reply, a blade of harsh light sliced the barn's interior. We froze, breath held captive. We know you're in there, a coarse voice boomed from outside. Show yourselves, cooperate, and maybe the driver walks away. My heart threatened to batter its way out of my chest. Silas trembled violently beside me, his breathing shallow, erratic. What now? I whispered, the words catching in my throat. His hand found mine, pressing a thick sheaf of papers into my palm. The documents. Take them, he urged, his voice low but intense. Police, it's the only leverage, the only way. Then, before I could react, he was on his feet. I'm the one you want. His voice, astonishingly firm, cut through the tension. Let him go. He's uninvolved. Silas, no, I hissed, reaching, but he was already moving into the light's glare. Heavy footfalls crunched outside, converging. Go, Silas commanded, his back to me. Take the proof. Make it count. 1,000 protests died on my lips. He was right. This was bigger now. As the footsteps neared the door, I melted back into the deeper shadows, searching frantically. A loose plank near the foundation. With desperate strength, I worked it free, squeezing through the narrow opening into the sharp, cool air. Behind me, angry shouts erupted, culminating in the flat, final crack of a gunshot that reverberated through the silent woods. I ran, blindly, stumbling, fueled by adrenaline and the echo of that shot, until my legs were lead and the barn was a receding nightmare. Dawn was painting the eastern sky in bruised pastels when I found myself on the edge of some sleeping town. Hands trembling, I drew out the papers Silas had entrusted to me. Names, dates, damning photographs, a chronicle of calculated evil that chilled me to the bone. Clarity pierced the fear. I knew the path forward. For Silas, for myself, for the unseen victims shadowed in these pages. Towards the town center, towards the promise of law, the documents felt like lead weights in my grip. That single, impulsive act of charity on a desolate highway had irrevocably altered the trajectory of my life, turning a simple journey into a descent. Yet, perhaps it's in the deepest shadows that unexpected reserves are found. Pushing open the heavy door of the police station, I felt not an end, but a beginning. A story far larger than my own was about to unfold. The last brass screw sank into the venerable wood, securing the antique lock mechanism. Elias pushed the heavy front door closed, the scent of old iron and beeswax mingling with the dust motes dancing in the afternoon light filtering through his living room. He tested the ornate handle, once a solid feel, twice still reassuring. From the inside, he slid the long, skeleton-like key into the slot. A smooth, satisfying clunk echoed as the bolt slid home. He pulled the handle again, firm, locked. He frowned, twisted the key back the other way, anticipating the familiar retraction of the latch. Silence. The mechanism offered no response. He tugged harder, rattling the heavy oak. Immovable. The door was sealed fast. Again, he worked the key, back and forth. a growing knot of frustration tightening in his gut. And then, low and distinct through the thick wood, came a sound like dry leaves skittering across pavement, a brittle, unsettling chuckle. It was faint, yet sharp enough to prickle the fine hairs along his forearm. Elias froze, key still gripped tight, knuckles white. Outside? Impossible. He lived utterly alone. Leaning closer, pressing his ear to the door's cool surface, he held his breath. A faint, deliberate scratch, scratch, scratch. Whispered against the grain, the sound of a fingernail, perhaps, tracing slow patterns on the exterior. His heart began a frantic rhythm against his ribs. Once more, the key. Once more, the lock refused him. He had chosen the lock himself, unearthed from a forgotten crate in the garage's shadowed depths. A relic, intricate and heavy, meant to replace the bland modernity of the previous fixture, lending character, perhaps even superior strength. Now it held him captive within the familiar confines of his own living room. He planted his shoulder against the unyielding oak, shoving with his weight. Nothing. He jiggled the key, withdrew it, reinserted it with painstaking care, turned. Futile. Each twist that failed was punctuated by that same muffled, arid laughter from beyond the threshold. Not loud, but chillingly clear, unnervingly amused. A cold pressure bloomed in his chest. His gaze swept the room, the worn sofa, the television's blank screen, the coffee table strewn with neglected journals, a standing lamp casting a lonely pool of light, the tall, dark cabinet against the far wall. All precisely as it should be, nothing outwardly disturbed. He bent toward the keyhole, his voice barely a tremor. "Hello?" Silence answered, thick and watchful. Then the scratching resumed, slower this time, a dry dragging sound like something sharp being pulled across the wood fibers. The peephole, sacrificed for the antique lock's installation, offered no view. The door itself was solid, windowless timber. Who or what lingered just inches away remained utterly hidden. "Who's there?" He tried again, striving for a command he didn't feel. Only the rasping sound replied, accompanied by a faint vibration beneath his palm as he pressed it against the door, like the delicate, insistent tapping of skeletal fingers. His throat felt parched. Stepping back, Elias forced himself to think rationally. Windows, escape routes. He crossed to the one overlooking the quiet street, its latch familiar to his touch. He unlocked it, gripped the frame, tried to slide it upward. It resisted, jammed tight. The old wood sometimes swelled in damp weather, requiring a forceful shove. He braced himself, pushed hard. It didn't budge an inch. He moved to the other window, nearer the television. The same stubborn refusal. He'd never encountered such resistance before. They were old, yes, but not malevolent. A creeping wrongness slithered up his spine. His hands trembled, slick with a sudden sweat. The back door, then, through the kitchen. He twisted the knob, pulled, jammed. The deadbolt, when he tried it, was equally frozen, refusing to turn. He found himself back at the front door, the heavy iron key feeling alien in his hand. He inserted it, turned with deliberate slowness. A faint groan from the mechanism, a fractional give as he pulled. The dry laughter returned, closer now. A soft cascade of amusement whispered directly against the keyhole, as if mocking his persistence. He tried to block it out, focusing on the lock itself. Iron, sturdy, correctly installed according to the faded diagram he'd found with it. It shouldn't fail from the inside. Kneeling, he peered at the keyhole, the latch mechanism visible in the gap, the strike plate. All appeared sound. He pushed the door again, expecting some play, some slight movement. Nothing. Solid as bedrock. Wiping his damp palms on his trousers, the feeling of entrapment intensified, suffocating, and inexplicable. Kicking it seemed futile, the oak thick, likely to injure him before yielding. And besides, the presence on the other side might be anticipating just such a move. What did it want? He resisted the urge to shout, to curse it, refusing to betray his fear. Instead, he pressed his ear to the wood once more, straining to hear. A new sound emerged, whispering, faint and sibilant, the words impossible to decipher. A low, continuous muttering, like a secret being shared with the door itself. He swallowed, the sound loud in the tense silence. Was that his name? Elias? He couldn't be certain. Leaning closer, his forehead touched the cool wood. The whispering seemed to coil, growing slightly louder. Yet the words remained frustratingly elusive, hinting at things within the room itself. Fragments reached him. Inside, the room holds secrets, hidden things. Look closer. He recoiled, a chill tracing patterns on his neck and arms. The room. His gaze darted around again, searching the mundane surfaces for something missed. His eyes settled on the old cabinet in the corner, a dark, hulking piece inherited years ago. Inside, he knew, were odds and ends, old tools, forgotten papers, and a small, unassuming wooden box retrieved from his grandfather's house, unopened, dismissed as containing just old letters. Now, spurred by the disembodied whisper of secrets, a strange compulsion drew him towards it. His breath came short and shallow. He forced himself toward the cabinet, its hinges sighing as he pulled the door open. Dust motes swirled in the dim interior. A screwdriver lay beside a stack of brittle receipts, a folded dust cloth, and there it was, the small wooden box, roughly the size of a novella, its edges softened with age. He lifted it, heavier than it looked. His eyes flickered towards the front door, the key still defiantly lodged, then back to the box. It felt absurd, yet the insidious whispering, the laughter. He flipped the simple brass latch. The lid opened silently. Inside lay a few faded photographs and a slim, sealed envelope. The photos showed this very room, but arranged differently, years prior. One captured the cabinet itself, and beside it, startlingly, the small floor safe he'd kept hidden beneath the boards. He'd removed it ages ago, forgotten he'd even kept these pictures. The envelope felt brittle, smelling faintly of decay and time. He carefully tore it open. A single sheet of paper lay within, folded once. The handwriting was elegant, precise. Do not forget what you left behind. The door will not open until you face it. His heart hammered against his ribs. He read the cryptic message again, scalp prickling. How could the entity outside know? What had he left behind? The safe, perhaps? He'd taken it out, yes, relegated it to the dusty oblivion of the attic. Was that what it meant? He set the note down, glancing around the room, then back at the door. He tried the key again, a desperate, hopeful turn. The arid chuckle returned, then ceased abruptly. A voice, quiet as dust settling, murmured, "Find what you hid." Panic threatened to swamp him. The attic, accessed through a hatch in the hallway ceiling. He needed a chair. Dragging one from the dining area, he positioned it beneath the square outline, climbed onto it, and pushed the hatch upward. A shower of dust rained down, making him cough. Gritting his teeth, he hauled himself up into the oppressive dimness. His phone's flashlight beam cut through the gloom, illuminating rafters, stacked boxes, spectral shapes of discarded furniture. And there, in the furthest corner, the familiar cubic form of the old metal safe. He navigated the treacherous beams, his movements clumsy in the cramped space. Reaching it, he knelt. The combination, his old apartment number, surfacing from memory. He turned the dial, heard the tumblers align, and pulled the handle. It swung open. Inside, a sheaf of papers, bundled documents, and items he barely recalled stowing away. A tarnished wristwatch with a cracked face, a small ring of unidentifiable keys, and another sealed envelope. This one he tore open immediately. Another note, same script. Show them what you hid. Put it in plain view. Show who? The presence at the door. Confusion warred with rising fear. He switched off the flashlight, plunging the attic into absolute blackness. From below, a soft, protracted creak sounded, as if the door at the foot of the unseen attic ladder had shifted. Heart pounding, he flicked the light back on, scrambled back to the hatch. Nothing had moved below. He climbed down, legs unsteady, the awkward posture and the unnerving sounds leaving him shaky. Back in the living room's oppressive stillness, he emptied the safe's contents onto the coffee table. The documents were mundane. Old leases, his own birth certificate, bank statements. The watch remained silent, broken. The keys were anonymous brass. Show them what you hid. What did it mean? On impulse, he tried the strange keys in the front door lock. None fit. Perhaps he should place the items near the door. A supplicant offering? Feeling utterly foolish, he arranged the papers, the watch, the keys on the floorboards directly before the threshold. He waited. Silence. He tried the main key in the lock again, still stuck fast. But the whispering returned, louder now, insistent, shaping itself into discernible words. Not those. The secrets in the room. Inside. He stepped back, scanning the space anew. Sofa, table, TV stand, cabinet, lamp. He plunged his hands beneath the sofa cushions. Loose change, a forgotten pen. He lay flat, peering underneath. Dust bunnies and, shoved far back, a cardboard box filled with old photographs. He dragged it out. Images of forgotten faces swam before him. Family gatherings, friends drifted away, colleagues from jobs long past. An uncomfortable heat rose in his chest as he flipped through them, his stomach twisting. The voice outside murmured again, indistinct but impatient. He placed the box of photos atop the coffee table, open, exposed. Returning to the door, he tried the key. A slight give this time, a subtle shift within the mechanism. Hope surged, cold and sharp. He pulled the handle, still caught, but a low whisper, intimate and deep, breathed against the wood. Show everything. Understanding dawned, cold and stark. It wanted all of it. Every hidden scrap, every buried memory housed within these four walls. He went to the cabinet, emptying its contents onto the already cluttered table. Receipts, tools, the wooden box with its photos and note. He raided the small closet off the living room, pulling out boxes of old clothes, bundles of letters tied with faded ribbon, relics of past loves, old journals filled with thoughts he'd long since buried. He spread them across the sofa, the table, the floor. He stood back, breathing heavily, sweat cooling on his neck. The room was chaos, a landscape of his concealed past laid bare. He approached the door, pressed his ear to it. The whispering had subsided to a low hum. He tried the key. The latch moved further, a more decisive click. The door shifted visibly in its frame. A soft sound emanated from outside, not laughter now, but a sigh, faint and almost satisfied. He tugged the handle. The door yielded a fraction more, but still held fast, as if an invisible hand pressed against it from the other side. He remembered the items from the safe, still on the floor. He picked up the watch, the keys, the documents, placing them directly before the threshold again, an offering to the unseen warder. Back to the lock. One more try. The key turned with newfound smoothness, a distinct click. The door remained shut, but the resistance felt different, less absolute. He pressed his shoulder to the wood. The voice spoke again, a quiet finality. Everything is out. You are free. His heart leapt. He tried the handle one last time. The door swung inward an inch, revealing a sliver of the empty, silent hallway beyond. No lurking figure, no shadow. He pushed harder. The door opened halfway. Elias stepped back, blinking, stunned by the sudden normalcy. The hallway stretched left and right, mundane and still. He leaned out cautiously. Nothing. The laughter, the whispering, the scratching, all gone. He stood there, one hand holding the door ajar, surveying the wreckage of his living room, the intimate archaeology of his past strewn across every surface. Relief warred with a profound sense of violation. He stepped fully into the hallway. The air felt ordinary, cool. Turning back, he examined the antique lock. From the inside, leaving his foot braced in the opening, he tested the key. It worked perfectly now, the latch sliding back and forth with oiled precision. He didn't understand. Perhaps he didn't want to. He stood for a long moment, breathing deeply, letting the adrenaline ebb. Calling someone felt pointless. Explaining this bordered on madness. He retreated into the living room, the chaos feeling both oppressive and strangely liberating. He picked up the ring of keys from the safe, carried them to the back door on a whim. The first key he tried slid into the lock, turned smoothly. The back door opened onto his familiar empty yard. He locked it again, returned to the front. The hallway remained deserted. He closed the front door, leaving it unlocked this time. Sinking onto the sofa amidst the scattered letters, boxes, and photographs, he felt the tension drain slowly from his shoulders. The silence in the house was profound, absolute. No whispers, no laughter, just quiet. He sat there, breathing, adrift in the exposed fragments of his life. It was deeply unsettling, yet the simple fact remained. He was no longer trapped. He could leave whenever he wished. That ancient lock, however, would remain untouched, a silent monument to the ordeal. Blood was the prelude. Before the stumbling gait, before the incoherent whispers clawing at the twilight air, there was the stark crimson signature, etched beneath ragged fingernails, a brutal abstract across his shredded shirt, tangled like dark berries in the thicket of his hair. He lurched into our small circle of firelight, just as the sun bled out behind the peaks, eyes vast and unseeing, murmuring fragments about being swallowed by the woods. In that suspended moment, my family frozen in a tableau of shock and nascent fear. I couldn't fathom how this ragged apparition would unravel our carefully woven piece, plunging us into a night governed by terror and the frantic scrabble for survival. For months, The whisper of the Sierras had been our family's lullaby. Clara, my wife, our son Leo, 12 summers old, little Maya, just 9, and we'd plotted this escape, a week unbound from routine, deep within the granite heart of the mountains. It was meant to be a reconnection, a shedding of the mundane. 3 days unfolded like a sun-drenched dream. Boots crunching on pine needle paths, the silver flash and tug of trout on the line, campfire smoke mingling with laughter, and the scent of burnt sugar under a canopy of stars. But the 4th evening arrived, and with it, the unmaking. I coaxed flames higher, the heart of our temporary home, while Clara orchestrated our simple meal. Leo and Maya, heads bent over a worn deck of cards nearby, were islands of quiet concentration. Then, a skittering violence in the undergrowth, not the heavy tread of deer, nor the deliberate shuffle of bear. Something else, something frantic. My hand instinctively found the cold cylinder of repellent we kept near. Out of the deepening shadows, he emerged, a man seemingly sculpted from nightmare and exhaustion. Sanctuary, the word rasped, broken from his throat as he staggered fully into the firelight. Lost, adrift. Clara inhaled sharply, her arm a sudden shield drawing the children closer. I rose, attempting a facade of calm, the bear spray a secret weight in my palm. Easy now, I offered, my voice steadier than the frantic drumming in my chest. Are you all right? Are you injured? He gave a frantic, bird-like shake of his head, the matted hair obscuring, then revealing, eyes that didn't seem to track, that seemed focused on some inner horror. Days, circling, no way back. Closer now, the firelight painted the grime on his clothes, not merely as dirt, but as the desiccated map of old violence. Dried blood, a chilling counterpoint to his claim of simply being lost. My own blood surged, a frantic rhythm against my ribs, yet I forced my hands up in what I hoped was a placating gesture. Okay, just take it easy. Sit down by the fire. We'll get you some water. He nodded, a flicker of desperate gratitude, and collapsed onto one of our camp stools, like a puppet whose strings had snapped. Clara, her face a mask of pale apprehension, passed me a canteen. I offered it to the stranger. He drank like a man parched beyond endurance, water and saliva tracing paths through the grime on his chin, his throat working convulsively. "What's your name?" I ventured, after the frantic gulping subsided. "Silas," he breathed, the name seeming to cost him effort. "Silas Vane." "All right, Silas. Can you tell us what happened? How did you get lost?" His gaze flickered, a trapped moth beating against glass, never settling on any one of us. "Hiking, with friends. We split up. The woods. Time dissolved." The narrative frayed at the edges, thin and unconvincing. Days lost out here? Where were the echoing calls of search parties, the rhythmic thrum of rotos slicing the vast mountain silence? And the blood? Whose blood, if he bore no apparent wounds himself? I caught Clara's eye across the fire. The same corrosive doubts resided there. A subtle incline of her head affirmed my silent warning. Keep the children near. "Silas," I began, treading carefully across the fragile ground of the moment. "We carry a satellite phone. We can signal for rescue. Bring professionals out here." The word rescue was a key turning the lock on some hidden, frantic chamber within him. His vacant eyes snapped into focus, blazing with a terrifying lucidity that sent ice down my spine. "No!" The cry ripped through the quiet evening air as he sprang upright. A coiled spring suddenly released with startling agility. "No signals! They mustn't find me!" Leo and Maya flinched, shrinking against Clara's side. I moved instinctively, positioning myself as a buffer, my grip tightening on the canister until my knuckles ached. "Who'll find you, Silas?" I pressed, battling to keep the tremor from my voice. "Who are you running from?" His head whipped around, scanning the encroaching darkness as if expecting ambush from the shadows themselves. "The Changed," he hissed, the word laden with a nameless dread. "They hunt. They turned." A glacial dread seeped into my gut, cold and heavy. This man wasn't merely lost. He was fractured, adrift in a private terror, and unpredictably dangerous. Miles of wilderness separated us from any semblance of sanctuary, and the means to summon help was now, terrifyingly, a trigger for his paranoia. "Okay, Silas," I soothed, mimicking a calm I didn't feel. "No calls. Just sit back down. Let's figure this out together." For a heartbeat, he seemed to waver, sinking slightly back towards the stool, a flicker of compliance in his posture. Then Maya, her voice small, trembling, yet clear in the sudden stillness, pierced the fragile truce. "Papa, why does the man have blood on him?" Silas's head snapped towards her, eyes incandescent with a fresh wave of madness. "Blood?" he echoed, a low growl rumbling in his chest that vibrated with menace. "Oh yes, blood. Had to defend myself. They came for me. They tried to take me. But I was stronger. I won." He surged to his feet again, fists opening and closing convulsively at his sides. Peripherally, I saw Clara easing the children back, inch by silent, agonizing inch, towards the flimsy haven of the tent. "Silas," I urged, desperately trying to reclaim his volatile attention, to draw the lightning to myself. "Why don't you tell me more about these others? Who are they?" But Silas Vane wasn't listening. His gaze had locked onto Maya, a predatory stillness descending upon him, chilling and intent. "So young," he murmured, a horrifying possessiveness twisting the sound. "Still pure. They haven't reached her yet." That was the precipice. No more words, no more attempts at reason. In a single, fluid arc born of adrenaline and fear, the canister came up, my thumb depressing the trigger. A blinding orange fog erupted, engulfing his face in caustic mist. A shriek, less human than animal, tore from him as he clawed blindly, uselessly, at his burning eyes. "Run!" I roared at my family. The command ripped raw from my throat. "The truck, now!" Clara needed no second urging. She swept Maya into her arms, grabbed Leo's wrist, and they became streaks of desperate motion towards the hulking shape of our SUV parked just beyond the firelight's reach. I held my ground for a crucial second, a desperate dam against the thrashing, howling figure of Silas Vane. Blinded, choking, he possessed an appalling, unnatural strength. He lunged, a guided missile of pain and fury, tackling me low. We hit the earth hard, breath punched from my lungs. Dirt and pine needles filled my mouth. His fingers, those blood-caked talons, scrabbled with terrifying intent for my eyes. His breath, fetid and rank, washed over me in a suffocating wave. The madness burned bright and undeniable in his crimson-streaked eyes. "You can't stop it," he spat, voice distorted by the spray and his consuming rage. The change. It's coming for us all. Adrenaline surged, a primal fire igniting desperate strength. I drove a knee hard into his gut, breaking his hold, scrambled backward on hands and knees like a cornered animal, then found my feet and sprinted, lungs searing, towards salvation. The sanctuary of the truck loomed. Clara had the engine roaring, a mechanical growl against the backdrop of Silas's inhuman screams. I threw myself into the passenger seat. Drive, Clara, drive. The tires spun, spitting gravel, fishtailing wildly on the rutted track as she slammed the accelerator. In the side mirror, a horrifying tableau unfolded. Silas Vane, impossibly, was gaining on us, loping through the trees with a speed that defied human limits, a relentless phantom fueled by unknown energies, his silhouette flickering between the trunks in the dying light. Terror, cold and sharp, pierced through me anew, fresh and visceral. Trees blurred past into a vertiginous tunnel of deepening green. Behind us, the children wept, their small sounds swallowed by the engine's roar and the pounding of my own heart. "Papa, what was wrong with him?" Leo stammered through his tears from the back seat. "I don't know, son," I managed, the lie tasting like ash in my mouth. "Just sick. Someone very sick. But we're safe now. It's over." Yet the image of Silas Vane's burning eyes, the chilling echo of his prophecy, "The change is coming for us all," mocked my hollow reassurance. We didn't stop, didn't dare breathe easy, until the first faint halo of town lights punctured the oppressive, consuming darkness hours later. The police station became our refuge, its stark fluorescent lights a brutal contrast to the firelight and looming shadows of the woods. Hours bled into the clinical process of recounting the nightmare, painting verbal portraits of the bloodied man, Silas Vane. Search teams mobilized at dawn, combed the woods with dogs and maps. He vanished as completely as if the forest floor had swallowed him whole. They found our campsite, though ravaged, violated, gear strewn and torn, and daubed on the ancient bark of surrounding pines, stark against the wood, were cryptic symbols drawn in what could only be dried blood. We tried stitching normalcy back over the ragged wound in the days and weeks that followed. We spoke of him, when we spoke of him at all, as an aberration, a lone, fractured soul encountered by terrible ill chance. Yet, the narrative felt thin, insufficient armor against the memory. The Sierras called to us no more. The children cite burgeoning maturity, the inconvenience of roughing it. But Clara and I know the truth. The wild, once our sanctuary, our place of peace, now whispers of violation, remembers the terror in the deep woods. Sometimes, late at night, when the wind moans around the eaves or shadows stretch into unfamiliar shapes across the lawn, the question surfaces, unbidden and cold. Was Silas Vane merely mad? Or was he a harbinger, a prophet of some creeping doom? His talk of the changed, his frantic flight, the impossible speed. I find myself watching the tree line at the edge of town, listening for a rustle in the dark beyond the porch light, half convinced that something wicked this way comes, still hunting, patient, waiting for the change he promised is coming for us all. A disquiet settled the moment Elias's boot met the groaning timber of the farmhouse porch. The air, thick and stagnant, clung like old cobwebs. Out beyond the porch rail, the wind sighed through the cornfield, an incessant papery rasp. This stark landscape, inherited after his father's retreat to the city's embrace, was alien territory, worlds removed from his usual weekend escapes. He'd envisioned disconnection, a shedding of urban static. Then his gaze snagged on the figure impaled amidst the corn, the scarecrow. A silent sentinel, head bowed as if in perpetual mourning. Its eyes, obsidian chips catching the afternoon sun, glittered with a cold, unnatural light. A knot tightened low in his belly, a primal warning he tried and failed to dismiss. He hauled his duffel inside, the house exhaling a musty breath. Dust motes danced in the slanted light cutting through grime-streaked windows. Furniture, shrouded in age and neglect, felt brittle beneath his touch. Shoving open stiff sashes, he invited a breeze that did little to dispel the gloom. Bag dropped onto a scarred armchair, he retreated outdoors, drawn back to the sentinel. The corn, a dense wall higher than his shoulders, pressed close. Parched earth cracked underfoot. To the left, a barn shed paint like sunburnt skin. And there, anchoring the field's center, the effigy stood. Tattered shirt, trousers gaping with lost straw, arms outstretched in a perpetual weary welcome. Its hat, battered and split, clung precariously. Yet, it was the eyes that held him. Not buttons, not painted circles, but polished glassy orbs, reflecting the vast sky with unnerving clarity. Like wet pebbles. He circled the house, seeking the generator. A glance back from a new vantage point. Had the head shifted? Was it no longer aimed his way? Nerves, he told himself. Just nerves. The generator sputtered, coughed a plume of stale gasoline fumes, then roared briefly to life. The sound swallowed instantly by the rustling corn and the indifferent quiet. Leaning against the clapboard, Elias surveyed the field again. The straw man remained, unmoving. Night fell heavy, exhaustion pulling at Elias after hours wrestling with dust and decay. He killed the lights, drawn to the living room window. Moonlight, thin and spectral, silvered the corn tassels. Above them, the dark silhouette of the watcher's head emerged, and its eyes, twin points of reflected lunar brilliance, gleaming like slick river stones. His breath hitched. An unfamiliar pressure bloomed in his chest. "It's nothing," he insisted internally. "Cloth and straw, a farmer's crude trick." He forced himself away, retreating to the dubious comfort of a bed that smelled of disuse. Sleep proved elusive. Wind skittered against the glass like fingernails. Whispers seemed to ride the drafts. Were those footsteps on the brittle earth outside? He jolted upright once, certain of a distinct crunch directly beneath his window. Silence descended, thick and absolute, broken only by the frantic pulse in his ears. His mouth was desert dry, a falling branch surely. He sank back, eventually succumbing to a restless, dream-haunted slumber. Dawn arrived gray and reluctant. Elias stood on the porch, cradling a mug of bitter instant coffee, gaze sweeping across the yard to the corn. The sentinel's arms maintained their stiff embrace. Yet, its torso. Had it pivoted just a fraction? A subtle shift, undeniable to his tightening gut. The breeze, barely a sigh, couldn't budge that figure, anchored as it was to a stout wooden stake. Taking a steadying breath, he ventured into the field. Near the base of the post, the earth bore strange markings. Intricate spirals coiled within circles, lines radiating outwards like fractured sigils. He crouched, tracing a groove with his finger. The soil beneath felt cool, recently disturbed, yielding a faint, acrid, loamy scent. Rising, he confronted the burlap face. The eyes, those smooth, obsidian-like stones, seemed colder, deeper. He reached out, tapped one hesitantly. It was stone cold, mirroring his own wide-eyed reflection back at him. A scan of the surrounding corn revealed nothing but swaying stalks, whispering secrets only they knew. The subsequent days were a blur of forced activity, mending floorboards, inspecting shingles, anything to occupy his hands and mind. Yet, the effigy exerted a constant pull. Every glance from a window brought a fresh jolt of unease. It burrowed under his skin. The third night confirmed his dread. Peering out after extinguishing the lamps, he found the figure undeniably rotated, its torso now squarely facing the farmhouse. Those polished eyes captured the moonlight, tiny silver daggers aimed directly at his window. He slammed the lock home, yanked the curtains shut, heart hammering against his ribs. Huddled on the couch, wrapped in a thin blanket, he listened. The wind, the house's nocturnal groans, and then footsteps, slow, deliberate, crunching across the yard's gravelly patches. Not the house settling, not the wind. Measured, cautious steps. He held his breath, pulse roaring, palms slick with sweat. Frozen. The steps eventually receded, replaced by a different sound. The dry friction of stalks being pushed aside, deep within the corn. He woke stiff on the couch as pale light seeped through the curtains. Outside, a search revealed no clear footprints, only more of the unsettling sigils etched near the corn's edge. Larger now, deeper, as if gouged with purpose. He knelt, tracing a spiral. Its edges felt sharp, freshly cut into the damp earth. A tremor ran through him despite the morning chill. Looking up, the scarecrow seemed to lean forward slightly, a subtle, predatory incline. Enough. Fetching a claw hammer from the barn's shadowed interior, Elias strode into the corn, the air strangely still, devoid of birdsong, only the rustle of leaves accompanying him. He gripped the thick post, planted his feet, and heaved. Nothing. Again, straining, leveraging his weight. It felt rooted, fused to the earth. He swung the hammer against the base, the impacts ringing dully, like striking granite, barely splintering the wood. Breathless, sweat stinging his eyes, he finally stopped, panting. The burlap face regarded him, those stone eyes impassive, watchful. A wave of nausea washed over him. He retreated, leaving the hammer on the workbench with trembling hands. Evening bled into a luminous moonlit night. Elias sat hunched on the porch steps, flashlight clutched tight, its beam periodically slicing the darkness. His nerves were frayed wires. A leg jittered uncontrollably. Near midnight, the rustling began anew. Louder this time, purposeful, a steady progress through the dense stalks. He swept the flashlight's beam towards the sound, but the angle revealed nothing. His breathing grew shallow, ragged. Run inside? No, stand fast. Then, a flicker at the edge of his vision, a shadow detaching itself from the rows, slipping between stalks. The snap of a dry leaf, the soft crunch of earth. Gooseflesh prickled his arms. He held his breath, watching, heart pounding a frantic rhythm. The movement ceased, clicking off the light, plunging the yard back into moon-washed stillness. He scrambled backward into the house, the deadbolt rasping shut. Morning inspection revealed the sentinel tilted further still, leaning precariously forward as if bowing to the house. And the symbols, they had returned, encircling the post in a continuous, unbroken ring, their lines freshly scored, radiating outwards like dark veins in the soil. He circled it slowly, the pressure in his chest returning, mouth parched. An intuition, cold and certain, whispered of something ancient, bound to this spot. He tried calling Julian, his friend from 2 towns over. The signal flickered, weak, the call failing. Julian had laughed when Elias mentioned the scarecrow, the symbols, blaming solitude and exhaustion, but promised to drive out on the weekend, help him wrestle the damn thing down. That promise had been a small anchor. But the weekend arrived, the afternoon waned, and the driveway remained empty. Another attempt to call failed. Defeated, he returned to the field. The effigy now leaned so far, its burlap face was aimed directly at the farmhouse windows, its stone eyes catching even the diffuse daylight. The ring of sigils seemed darker, more potent. He kicked at one, trying to scuff it out, lost his footing, stumbled. A desperate urge to flee, warred with a morbid magnetic pull to understand. That night, Elias stationed himself by the window. Chair pulled close, vigil kept in utter darkness. The moon, swollen and brilliant, drenched the corn in ethereal light. The scarecrow held its forward-leaning pose, arms spread wide. Exhaustion battled tension as he waited. Then, near midnight, movement. A flicker near the base of the post. A dark shape, low to the ground, circling the stake. Elias strained to see, pulse thundering. A faint scraping noise reached him, wood against something harder, followed by a low sound, perhaps a guttural expulsion of breath, a hiss. His limbs felt leaden, mind racing. He couldn't look away. Abruptly, the scarecrow itself moved. A jerk backward, a sharp tilt, as if shoved or pulled from below. A strangled sound escaped Elias's throat. He fumbled for the lamp switch, his legs trembling. Light flooded the room, momentarily blinding him to the scene outside. A frantic rustling erupted from the corn, then silence fell once more. As his vision cleared, the scarecrow appeared unchanged in its leaning posture. Yet, was its torso twisted slightly now? A wave of dizziness swept over him. He paced the room, frantic. Call the sheriff? About the shifting scarecrow? The absurdity mocked him. Before the first hint of dawn, Elias emerged, armed with a shovel and a length of stout rope. Resolve hardened his features. He plunged through the dew-laden corn, the air thick and cold enough to see his breath. Reaching the sentinel, anxiety churning within him, he attacked the earth around the post. He thrust the shovel deep, rocking it violently, straining against the stubborn ground. His muscles screamed. Minutes stretched into an eternity of effort. Then, a sharp crack. The post gave, shifted. Quickly, he looped the rope around the effigy's midsection, braced himself, and pulled with every ounce of strength. The post resisted, then groaned, wobbled, and finally tore free from its earthen socket with a sucking sound. Clods of dirt scattered. On the splintered base of the wood, a dark, viscous residue clung, glistening wetly like pitch. His vision swam momentarily. Gritting his teeth, he dragged the heavy form, straw, wood, and whatever else, away from the circle of sigils, across the field, depositing it onto a patch of bare earth behind the barn. He stepped back, chest heaving, shoulders burning. The scarecrow lay inert, burlap face upturned, those stone eyes fixed on the paling sky, yet somehow still on him. He rubbed his temples, shaking. What now? He only knew it had to be away from that spot. Full daylight found Elias returning to the house, aches radiating through his shoulders and hands. The plan? Haul the grotesque thing into his truck, drive it miles away, dump it where it could never find its way back. But when he circled the barn again, the patch of bare earth was empty. The rope lay discarded, a coiled serpent in the disturbed dirt. Scrape marks scarred the ground, leading towards the corn. He searched frantically, breath coming in ragged gasps, sweat cold on his skin. The corn rustled softly, a distant mocking sound. No sign of the effigy. Panic tightened its grip. Leave. Run. Yet, an invisible tether held him, a need to understand, to confront. He remains there still, a prisoner in the quiet farmhouse, pacing, drawn compulsively to the windows. The cornfield stands silent, watchful under the indifferent sky. But the silence screams. He feels the weight of those obsidian eyes, knows they are out there, waiting for the cloak of night. His heart hammers a heavy, erratic beat. He stands by the glass, peering into the dense green rose, waiting for the flicker of movement, for the inevitable return of the sentinel, inescapably certain that even now, unseen, it keeps its impossible vigil. Asphalt met the soles of my trainers with a percussive insistence, the sole counterpoint to the park's spectral hush. Lunar light, fractured by skeletal branches, painted elongated specters over the worn track. Routine, this nocturnal exertion, or so the illusion held. Until the curve near the defunct fountain, where a glacial tremor traced my vertebrae. Footfalls, not my own, echoed mine. Leo, that's me. 32 orbits around the sun, architect of digital worlds by day, solitary runner by night. This particular labyrinth, Briarwood Park, had been my circuit for years, its decline into neglect after civic funds evaporated, only deepening its strange allure. The ragged edges, the chiaroscuro lanes demanding focus. They were part of the draw. Tonight, though, the familiar solitude curdled. An unseen scrutiny had prickled at me from the periphery since I'd passed the rusted gates. A sensation initially dismissed as caffeine jitters or sleep deficit. Now, the distinct cadence of pursuit, sharp against the night, confirmed that nascent dread. My intuition hadn't lied. My pulse hammered against my ribs. I surged forward. The echo behind accelerated, mimicking my desperate tempo. A furtive look back, a silhouette, indistinct, 50 yards distant and closing. Closing fast. My thoughts splintered, reassembling into a frantic map of Briarwood's arteries. The main entrance, a distant sanctuary, a mile off. Closer lay a side egress, promising the relative safety of illuminated streets, the hum of late commerce. I broke from the path, plunging onto a swathe of dew-slicked lawn, a shortcut toward that hope. The footing betrayed me, slick and uneven. I stumbled, recovered, stumbled again. Behind the crashing progress of my follower through tangled undergrowth, stealth abandoned for raw pursuit. There, ahead, the side gate, a skeletal frame against the lesser dark. Relief surged, fragile and premature. Drawing nearer, hope disintegrated. Heavy chain coiled through the bars, secured by a padlock whose metallic sheen, stark under the moon, bespoke recent installation. When? My pause, born of despair, was fatal to escape. The footfalls thundered closer. I pivoted, spine impacting cold iron, bracing for the inevitable. Out of the umbra stepped a figure, triggering a flicker of uneasy memory. The man from the park entrance, unremarkable in stature and dress, yet possessed of a piercing gaze that had unsettled me hours before. Hold on, easy. His voice, incongruously level, cut through my ragged breathing. No harm intended, just need a word. A word? I gasped, lungs burning. You hunt me through this benighted place for a word." He raised his hands, palms outward, a gesture of pacification. "The optics are bad, I grant you, but I had to confirm you were solitary. This place, it isn't safe, not anymore, not with the vanishings." My brow furrowed, bewilderment eclipsing terror for a beat. "Vanishings? What are you saying?" His eyes darted, scanning the encompassing gloom, before he leaned conspiratorially near. "People disappearing. 3 this past month, all proximate to Briarwood Park. It's being suppressed, hushed up by the authorities. But there's a malignancy here, something deeply wrong." Vague talk, certainly. Unsettling whispers on the edge of hearing, but nothing substantiated, nothing official. "And your source for this?" I pressed, caution warring with a morbid fascination. "I witnessed it," he returned, his voice sinking to a near inaudible hush. "The most recent one, a runner, much like yourself. There one instant then, simply absent, as if the darkness itself had inhaled her. An icy current, unrelated to the night's breeze, coursed through me. "Impossible," I stammered, the denial sounding hollow even to my own ears. He gave a somber nod. "It sounds like madness, I know, but I've been observing Briarwood, trying to unravel this. I believe I'm nearing the truth, hence the warning. You're exposed." A fierce urge propelled me to label him delusional, to shove past and flee this unnerving encounter. Yet, the raw sincerity in his gaze, a palpable desperation, anchored me. And hadn't I sensed it myself? A recent miasma clinging to the park, an atmospheric pressure, the phantom weight of unseen eyes. "All right," I conceded, the word emerging slow and deliberate. "Hypothetically, what's the next move?" Relief visibly softened his taut features. "The Nexus. I'm convinced it's the derelict maintenance shed, deep in Briarwood's core. Unexplained luminescence, anomalous sounds, activity." Hesitation gnawed at me. Every primal urge shrieked for retreat, for the sanctuary of home, for willful ignorance. But the specter of further vanishings, of unanswered questions haunting grieving families, that prospect held a stronger, graver pull. "Fine," I heard myself say, astonished at the resolve in my tone. "Lead the way." We plunged deeper into the arboreal gloom, hugging the periphery of sight, our movements hushed. He introduced himself then. Silas, once a steward of these grounds, a park ranger made redundant by fiscal austerity. His connection persisted, a stubborn loyalty compelling him to monitor the park's descent. Approaching Briarwood's heart, details previously ignored now leapt into focus. Cryptic sigils etched into bark, alien to any known vandalism. Sterile plots where vegetation refused purchase. A peculiar, subliminal thrumming that vibrated in the air. Its origin elusive, omnipresent. Ahead, the maintenance shed materialized, a sagging silhouette promising only decay and disuse. Yet, as we advanced, a thin blade of unnatural light bled from beneath its warped doorframe. Silas pressed a finger to his lips, a silent command, then motioned me forward. We stole toward a filth-streaked window pane, cautiously surveying the interior. The sight within sent an arctic shock through my veins. The expected tableau of rust and ruin was absent, supplanted by an impossible panorama. Bizarre apparatus pulsed with internal light, filling the cramped space. At its nucleus, churned a luminous maelstrom, a rent in the perceived world, and orbiting this vortex, entities, shapes that resisted focus, their geometries fluid and wrong, inducing a visceral discomfort. One such being extended a limb, or appendage, into the swirling light, retrieving something. A human form, limp, inert. Horror seized me, absolute and paralyzing. I recoiled, equilibrium shattered, my mind frantically rejecting the input. Hallucination, light playing tricks. Silas's expression, etched with grim affirmation, offered no such escape. "This has to end," he breathed, urgency tightening his voice. "This violation, what they're doing to them, unacceptable." I managed a numb nod, terror a physical weight threatening to suffocate reason. How? The question felt futile. Us two? Against that? Silas produced a compact object from his coat. "Electromagnetic pulse," he stated flatly, "should disrupt the power source, destabilize their gateway. It's a single chance, no margin for error." Madness. Utter madness. Two civilians confronting forces ripped from fevered nightmares. Yet, the image of the vanished runner, the weight of unspoken losses, galvanized a desperate resolve. A strategy, crude and born of necessity. Silas would divert their alien attention. I would infiltrate, deploy the EMP near the core mechanism. Elementary on paper, petrifying in execution. Time compressed. Silas flung the door wide, erupting into shouts, gesticulating wildly. The entities pivoted, their unstable forms shimmering with something akin to astonishment. I plunged into the breach, fingers trembling as I activated the device. Proximity achieved, target acquired. Then, detection. One creature fixed upon me, emitting a soundless shriek that resonated deep within my marrow. It moved, a blur of impossible speed. I thrust the EMP onto the humming console, thumb jamming the activator. An instant of stasis. Then, pandemonium erupted. Console spat incandescent sparks. The acrid tang of ozone choked the air. The light vortex imploded violently, its suction dragging at everything, the alien shapes shrieking, contorting as they vanished into the collapsing singularity. Silas's hand clamped onto my arm, hauling me back toward the exit. We fled, refusing the urge to look back as the shed detonated in a silent, blinding flash. The earth bucked beneath us. Oblivion seemed imminent. Then, stillness. We lay strewn across the damp grass, air tearing into our lungs. Behind us, the shed stood, a charred husk, horrifyingly mundane in its ruin. The ensuing days brought official inquiries yielding only ashes and mundane explanations of faulty wiring. Concurrently, the vanished reappeared, dazed, adrift in fragmented time, yet physically intact, their memories wiped clean of the interim. Silas and I convened sporadically, attempting to assemble the fractured narrative, but the full scope of events in Briarwood Park remained shrouded, perhaps permanently unknowable. My nocturnal circuits through the park persist, but their nature has irrevocably shifted. Each footfall now carries the weight of vigilance. I run not merely for fitness, but as a sentinel scanning the periphery. For I carry the unsettling certainty that the membrane separating our mundane existence from encroaching strangeness is terrifyingly thin. Sometimes, all that holds the line is an ordinary man pounding the pavement, and a displaced guardian armed with ingenuity born of desperation. So, should you find yourself traversing the lonely hours, and the hairs on your neck prickle with unseen attention. Heed that primal warning. The shadows conceal more than just darkness. "6 months, Elias had called this place home, this modest structure clinging to a plot surprisingly generous with its wildness. The overgrown lawn, the sagging spine of the back fence, these imperfections had sung a siren song of potential, tasks he felt equipped to manage. A sealed well, mentioned offhand by the agent, like some quaint historical footnote, barely registered. Until, that is, 2 weeks passed, when ambition stirred him toward landscaping, toward wrestling the unruly earth. He hadn't foreseen that unseating a disc of pitted iron would crack open the door to sleepless, sweating nights, haunted by the phantom weeping of water within the very bones of his house. The memory remained sharp, etched by the day's oppressive heat. Elias, clad in stiff work gloves and a sweat-darkened gray shirt, breathed the fecund scent of damp soil rising from the neglected yard. A shovel bit through the tangled embrace of vines smothering the wellhead. Beneath lay the iron cap, mottled with rust, a heavy chain looped through its central ring like a forgotten mooring. The metal, thicker, more formidable than anticipated, resisted. Only the persuasive bite of a crowbar offered purchase. A tortured groan of metal on stone shivered up his arms as the lid grudgingly yielded. Minutes of straining wrestled it aside, leaving him breathless, perspiration plastering the shirt to his back. Within the shaft, the brickwork gleamed with an unnatural dampness, though the surrounding ground remained parched. Leaning over the aperture, a miasma of stagnant air struck his throat, forcing a cough. He fumbled for the torch he'd brought. Its beam sliced the gloom, illuminating the slick bricks, and then caught. A subtle sparkle lodged in a crevice near the lip. He crouched lower, one gloved hand steadying him on the well's rim. His fingers grazed something small, unyielding. Setting the torch aside, he probed with his other hand, coaxing the object free. A ring. Its band was substantial, forged from some indeterminate metal, perhaps silver, perhaps iron, obscured by grime. At its heart sat a cabochon of dark, lusterless crystal or stone. It radiated an intrinsic chill, colder than the metal that held it, colder than the ambient air. Wedged tight, it surrendered only with a sudden, jarring release that nearly sent Elias tumbling forward. The instant it rested in his palm, a disquiet bloomed, a prickling awareness crawling up the nape of his neck. Impulse, tinged with a strange curiosity he couldn't name, made him pocket it. Why consign it back to the dark? He slid the heavy lid back into place, the final thud echoing slightly, then turned his attention to the mundane tyranny of weeds for the remainder of the afternoon. Evening drew in, bringing the relief of a hot shower. Yet beneath the rhythmic drumming of water on tile, another sound intruded, a persistent, syncopated drip, out of cadence with the showerhead spray. Elias twisted the faucet shut. Silence descended, save for that phantom plink, plink, plink. He checked the bathroom sink, its chrome fixtures bone dry. The sound seemed to emanate from within the walls themselves, a secret, aqueous heartbeat. He tapped the tile, listening. Then, as suddenly as it began, it faded. Old houses, he reasoned, breathed and settled in peculiar ways. Sleep, when it finally claimed him, offered no sanctuary. Bone-weary, Elias surrendered to the mattress, yet an undercurrent of unease persisted beneath his fatigue. Perhaps just the day's exertion, he thought. Then the dream took hold. A vertiginous plunge into the well he'd disturbed hours before. Bricks blurred past in the sickening rush, cold air tearing at his face. Far below, a shapeless darkness waited, utterly still. And from that abyss, a voice resonated, a subsonic rumble vibrating deep within his chest. "Return it," it commanded. He snapped awake, heart hammering against his ribs, sheets clinging with cold sweat. The bedroom lay steeped in blackness, but the dripping was back, impossibly loud, seemingly right beside the bed. His hand shot out, fumbling for the lamp switch. Light flooded the room, revealing nothing amiss. He lay back, rigid, listening. Sleep now, a distant shore. Daylight brought a determination to banish the night's phantoms through sheer physical labor. Elias attacked the dilapidated fence, hammering fresh timber into place. He wrestled unruly bushes into submission, raked drifts of decaying leaves. Yet, in every pause, every moment of quiet contemplation, the insidious drip returned. It was a mercurial sound, lacking a fixed source, seeming to drift from the vicinity of the weathered shed one moment, then whispering near the kitchen window the next. Imagination, he chided himself. Or perhaps that damned ring, cursed. The thought felt ludicrous, yet persisted. By late afternoon, fatigue gnawed at him. Seeking respite, he retreated indoors for a cold soda. The satisfying hiss as he twisted the cap was immediately followed by it. Drip, drip, drip. This time, it felt deliberate, almost mocking. A knot tightened in his gut. He downed the drink quickly, the sweetness lost on him, setting the bottle down with a clink. His eyes scanned the surfaces, half expecting a telltale puddle, but the kitchen remained resolutely dry. He sought refuge in sleep early that night, hoping rest would quell the rising tide of anxiety. Instead, darkness delivered him back to the well, sinking endlessly into a bottomless void. A silent scream lodged in his throat. The subterranean voice echoed around him, insistent, "Return the ring." He woke with a strangled gasp, chest constricted, body trembling. The clock glowed 3 p.m., a raw thirst clawed at his throat. He padded down the darkened hallway, each footfall unnaturally loud on the wooden floorboards. Flipping on the kitchen light felt like exposing himself. As he reached for the sink, turning the tap, an intense prickling sensation crawled up his spine, the undeniable feeling of being observed. He whirled around, empty room, yet the fine hairs on his arms bristled, his heart pounded a frantic rhythm. The faucet sputtered, then yielded a stream of water. He filled a glass, gulping it down, the liquid feeling strangely thick, heavy. Wiping his mouth, he twisted the tap shut. Instantly, the dripping erupted, louder than ever, seemingly originating directly beneath the basin. He flung open the cabinet doors. Pipes, cleaning supplies, all dry, no leak. The drip, drip, drip persisted for several heartbeats, sharp and distinct, then abruptly ceased, swallowed by silence. In the days that followed, the dripping became his unwelcome shadow. It whispered during moments of quiet concentration in the living room, echoed faintly as he retrieved tools from the garage, even seemed to follow him down the drive to the mailbox. Never intrusive enough to drown out other sounds, merely a soft, insistent, utterly misplaced percussion. Elias attempted normalcy, went to his job, managed a strained coffee meeting with a colleague, but every sip of liquid, coffee or water, brought a fresh wave of disquiet. He began to unconsciously avoid water, forgoing hand washing, unless strictly necessary, using paper towels to mop sweat instead of splashing his face at the sink. His skin grew perpetually clammy, a state he preferred to the unnerving scrutiny that accompanied the sound of running water. The ring resided in a small wooden box within his nightstand drawer. He tried to ignore its presence, but inevitably, reaching for socks or chargers, his gaze would snag on it. On the few occasions he touched it, its chill seeped into his fingertips, sometimes accompanied by a faint, almost imperceptible vibration that stirred a nauseous feeling deep inside. And sometimes, unbidden, the low voice would surface in his thoughts, a simple, chilling imperative. Return it. Cold sweat would break out across his brow. His mind churned with frantic, half-formed theories, but he clung to tangible tasks, mending the fence, patching drywall, anchors in a reality rapidly losing its moorings. One evening, driven by a desperate need for answers, or perhaps just confirmation of his sanity, Elias resolved to confront the well again. He waited until the bruised light of sunset bled across the yard, hoping daylight's dying embers offered some measure of courage. The vines, tenacious, had already begun reclaiming the iron lid. It resisted his efforts as stubbornly as before, screeching in protest as he dragged it clear. Kneeling, heart thudding against his ribs, he peered into the abyss, torch beam cutting the gloom. The bricks still wept their inexplicable moisture. A sudden gust of frigid air billowed up, chilling his face, though the evening air hung still and warm. He directed the light downwards. Darkness swallowed the beam, no glint of water reflected from the depths. His breath hitched, pulse accelerating. He strained his ears, catching the faint, rhythmic drip echoing from far below. His mouth was dust, palms slick with sweat. He tightened his grip on the torch. Then it came, not the voice in his head, but a sound vibrating up from the shaft itself. A low, guttural, protracted moan that seemed to ooze from the very earth. Startled, his hand convulsed. The torch slipped, tumbling down, its light pinwheeling crazily before striking the unseen bottom with a distant clatter. Elias scrambled backward, a raw cry tearing from his throat, his heart trying to batter its way out of his chest. He shoved the lid back with frantic force, scraping his knuckles raw on the concrete surround. The lost torch was irrelevant. He fled back towards the house, refusing to look back. That night found Elias huddled on his living room sofa, every lamp blazing against the encroaching dark. Nausea churned within him. The phantom dripping seemed to weave itself into the very fabric of the house, a subtle torment threading through the walls. Returning the ring, the thought circled relentlessly. But how? Simply toss it back into that gaping maw and reseal it. Would that appease whatever lingered below, or merely provoke it further? The dream voice demanded its return, yet offered no instructions. A chilling image surfaced, leaning over the edge, only for something cold and unseen to grasp his arm. He wiped clammy sweat from his brow, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs. Jaw clamped tight, shoulders rigid knots of tension. He scanned the room, half expecting spectral damp patches to bloom on the ceiling or floor. Nothing. Only the dry, familiar space, and that incessant drip, drip, drip echoing not in the room, but within the chambers of his own skull. Sleep offered only fragmented respite, each brief surrender punctuated by visions of the well, the reverberation of the voice, jolting him awake, gasping, his pillow damp with night sweat. Morning found him hollow-eyed and exhausted. He forced himself to the kitchen sink, needing to rinse a mug. His hands shook as he turned the tap. Water splashed into the basin, and immediately the prickling awareness returned, unseen eyes boring into his back. His skin crawled. He rushed the task, shutting off the flow abruptly. Enough. This slow erosion of his sanity couldn't continue. He retrieved the ring from its box. It felt unnaturally cold, like a shard of captured winter. Slipping it into his pocket, he walked with leaden steps out into the yard. He stood before the well, the air unnervingly still. Bile rose in his throat. Steeling himself, he grasped the chain, hauling the heavy lid aside one last time, the grating shriek of metal setting his teeth on edge. He knelt at the precipice, the gaping blackness seeming to pulse below. Drawing the ring from his pocket, his heart hammered against his throat, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. Darkness yawned beneath him. He held the ring suspended over the void, breath catching. The voice surged, not from below, but from within his own mind, deafening. Return it. His hand trembled violently. The ring slipped from his numb fingers, a tiny, dark object swallowed instantly by the profound blackness. For a suspended moment, Elias remained kneeling, listening intently. Silence, profound and absolute. Then, from the depths, a single, resonant drip echoed upwards. A wave of weakness washed through his limbs. He levered the heavy lid back into position, pressing it down firmly, the finality of the act offering little comfort. His entire body remained coiled with tension as he trudged back to the house, deliberately not looking back. Inside, he stood at the kitchen sink, a test. He turned on the water, letting it cascade into the basin, deliberately washing his hands, bracing for the familiar prickle of unseen observation. It was there, yes, but muted now, a ghost of its former intensity. When he shut off the tap, he held his breath, listening. The phantom dripping was softer, less insistent, almost hesitant. The profound unease hadn't vanished entirely, but a palpable weight had lifted from his spirit. Whether the act truly appeased the well's occupant, Elias couldn't know. Sleep comes more readily now, the nightmares faded impressions, rather than visceral assaults. Occasionally, a faint, errant drip might echo through the quiet house, but the frantic terror doesn't seize him. The voice remains silent. He finds himself watching the backyard, his gaze drawn compulsively to the sealed wellhead, vigilant for any sign of disturbance. The memory of the ring's glacial touch, the water's sentient pursuit, these things remain indelible. Every unexpected trickle or gurgle in the plumbing makes him pause, listen, assess. Is the presence truly dormant, or merely waiting? He doesn't have the answer, but he can stand at his sink now, run the water, and not feel the cold breath of something ancient and unseen on the back of his neck. For now, perhaps, that fragile truce is enough. This house, my own small patch of the world, had never known unease until now. But night after night found me rigid in bed, straining to decipher unpredictable sounds, my nerves taut against moments that ambushed the quiet, moments I could neither anticipate nor comprehend. When I first conceived of renting the guest room, I pictured innocuous travelers, fleeting tourists. Never did I conjure a presence defined by silence, a door perpetually locked with no evidence of passage, nor the ponderous tread of footsteps echoing in the hours meant for sleep. Leo, that's me. An unremarkable man, tethered to an unremarkable existence in a modest two-bedroom dwelling clinging to the town's edge. My days were measured by the rhythm of the hardware store where I worked, weekdays bleeding into weekends. To pad a thin wallet, I'd begun offering the spare room through online listings. Mostly, the traffic was transient, unremarkable as backpackers, weekend tourists, leaving little trace beyond faint footprints and crumpled receipts. Then, one afternoon, as late autumn bled the light from the sky, a figure materialized on my doorstep. Tall, shadowed beneath short, dark hair, draped in a long coat that seemed to absorb the fading day. A small, anonymous bag dangled from his right hand. Nothing overtly alarming registered at first, save for the void where a name should have been. Cash materialized, the rental fee counted out precisely, while his gaze slid past mine, refusing purchase. A low, measured voice declared a 4-night stay. I nodded, a dumb automaton. Did he require anything? A single, silent shake of the head. The air thickened with unspoken things. I stammered about Wi-Fi codes, the quirks of the front door lock, desperate to puncture the tension. A murmur, barely audible. Understood. I guided him down the short hall to the guest room. Compact, tidy, furnished with essentials. A narrow bed, a simple desk, a wooden chair. Clean linen, dustless surfaces. I watched him toss the bag onto the desk, his eyes sweeping the space with disconcerting speed. Still nameless, he offered no opening, and I lacked the nerve to pry. Anything you need, just shout, I offered weakly, retreating into the hallway. I lingered there a moment, anticipating the usual settling-in sounds. A drawer pulled open, a cough, the rustle of belongings. Silence answered. A profound, unnatural stillness. Most arrivals brought a small flurry of activity, inquiries about local eateries. This one simply vanished behind the closed door. Dinner hour arrived, yet no sound had breached the guest room's threshold, no sign of emergence. The door remained resolutely shut. Intrusion felt like a transgression, so I refrained from knocking. I warmed yesterday's meal in the kitchen's solitary glow, the silence pressing in as I ate, glancing compulsively at the clock, at the unmoving door. 11 o'clock found me retreating to bed. The hallway light cast a pale sentinel glow on his closed door. Asleep, surely. Yet the utter absence of sound gnawed at me. My own room lay directly opposite. Footsteps, opening doors. These were familiar nocturnes. Tonight, only a vacuum. Sleep was shallow, restless. Then around 2, a sound tore through the quiet. A grating scrape, visceral, like heavy wood dragged unwillingly across the floorboards. From his room, followed by footsteps, ponderous, deliberate. The sounds persisted for several minutes. I lay paralyzed, eyes fixed on the unseen ceiling, mind scrambling for logic. Rearranging the furniture at this hour? A knot tightened in my gut. Why push the bed, the desk? The scraping ceased abruptly. Silence rushed back in, heavier than before. Eventually, fractured sleep returned, populated by unsettling visions of my own furniture violently overturned. Dawn broke. I rose early, driven by a need to know. Was the door still closed? Had he slipped away, unseen? It stood as before, impassive, sealed. No audible stirrings within. A primal urge to knock warred with a tightening pressure in my chest, a premonition that held me captive. I fled to the familiar routine of work, seeking refuge in tasks, but the locked room shadowed my thoughts. Returning late afternoon, I found stasis. The closed door, the profound silence. My curiosity, now laced with genuine anxiety, pulsed. Usually a quick check-in, fresh towels offered, simple courtesies. But this silence felt like a warning. I hesitated, caution winning out. A meager supper of eggs and toast, consumed slowly in the kitchen. A pathetic lure of cooking smells meant to draw him out. He remained unseen, unheard. The second night descended, heavier than the first. 10 o'clock, the guest room door still an impenetrable barrier. Around 1, the dragging sounds resumed, sharp, insistent. My chest constricted. Immobility was impossible now. I slid from bed, ghosting towards my own door, easing it open a fraction. The hallway swam in the faint luminescence of a low-watt nightlight. Here, the scraping was louder, closer, furniture grinding against the wall itself. Then, a solid thump. My heart hammered against my ribs. I watched that inert door, braced for sudden violence. Nothing. The noises played out their unnerving sequence, then ceased utterly. No footsteps followed, no final scrape. Just silence, thick and waiting. I remained frozen, leaning against the doorframe, breath coming too quickly. Rationalizations flickered, adjusting the bed's position, a clumsy drop, but they felt hollow against the palpable tension. Surely common decency demanded an apology for such a disturbance. Morning arrived with resolve. I would knock, demand some sign of life. But before I reached the hall, my eye caught something alien on the floorboards. A small scrap of black fabric, coarse to the touch, like torn pocket lining. It lay directly before the guest room door, as if expelled from beneath. A cold tremor ran through me. I knelt, pressing my ear to the wood. Utter stillness. My mouth felt like sand, a soft rap, silence. 10 seconds stretched thin, a louder knock, nothing. "Hello?" I called out, voice tight. "Everything okay in there?" The silence held. I tested the knob, locked solid. The door was immovable. A film of sweat prickled my neck. This had tipped from peculiar into deeply wrong. Locksmith? Police? The justifications felt flimsy. He'd paid for 4 nights, this only the second morning. Perhaps he valued solitude to an extreme degree. Yet, those nocturnal sounds, I decided uneasily to grant one more day. If the silence persisted, I would seek help. Work was a blur. My focus perpetually snagged on the image of that locked door. My supervisor noted my distraction. I mumbled about a persistent headache. Home offered no change. The door remained sealed, the scrap of black cloth undisturbed on the kitchen counter where I'd left it. No indication he'd emerged for any reason. I ate dinner like a sentry, eyes fixed on the hallway. The vigil proved fruitless. Exhaustion claimed me on the couch around 9:30, the television murmuring unnoticed. Deep in the night, a sound jolted me awake. Heavy footfalls, seemingly overhead. Impossible. My house was a single story, possessing only a shallow crawl space beneath the roof, not a true attic. My heart began a frantic drumming. I silenced the TV, straining to hear. The steps ceased. With forced resolve, I moved to my bedroom, leaving the hall light burning, a flimsy shield against the encroaching dark. Inside my room, I did something unprecedented. I locked the door. It felt less like caution, more like necessity. Fully clothed, I lay rigid atop the covers, senses hyper-alert. The house whispered its usual nighttime language, clicks, groans, settling timbers, but no distinct footsteps. Sleep, thin and fragile, eventually came. It shattered abruptly, the distinct sound of my bedroom doorknob turning, a metallic click as the lock yielded. Then, the agonizingly slow creak of hinges as the door swung inward. My pulse detonated. My throat seized. Vision blurred in the dimness, shapes defined only by the weak hallway glow filtering in. Inch by agonizing inch, the door opened, revealing a dark form standing just beyond. I was utterly frozen, thought erased by primal terror. My hands clenched the bedding. A glacial cold spread through me. Slow, heavy steps sounded on my floorboards. Then, breathing, ragged, labored, like torn bellows. Fear clamped down on my chest, yet my eyes remained fixed on the approaching presence. One deliberate step, then another. Who? Who is it? The whisper tore from my throat, thin and trembling. No reply, only the rasping inhalation, exhalation. The fine hairs on my arms prickled upright. Every nerve screamed, fight or flight. But my limbs were stone. My hand groped blindly for the phone on the nightstand, shaking so violently I nearly sent it tumbling. Fumbling fingers stabbed at the screen, activating the flashlight. Its beam slashed across the room for a stark second, illuminating a silhouette. Tall, broad-shouldered, clad in a coat. The figure recoiled as if struck, turning sharply. Hurried footsteps retreated, and my bedroom door slammed shut with concussive force. I lay there, heart a wild drum against my ribs, the phone's beam trembling in my hand. It had to be him. But how? How had he bypassed his own locked door, then mine? My thoughts fractured, racing. Scrambling up, I flooded the room with overhead light and lunged for the door. The hallway stretched empty before me. The guest room door stood closed, infuriatingly serene, as if untouched. Then, a faint, final click from behind it. I twisted the knob, locked. Again, cold sweat slicked my skin. My own breathing roared in my ears. Sleep was annihilated. I spent the remaining hours under the glare of every light, eyes fixed on the door, braced for another intrusion. Nothing stirred until the pale relief of sunrise. Exhausted, but resolute, I knew this had to end. Privacy be damned. I would call a locksmith. No one would prowl my home unchallenged. At 7 sharp, I hammered on the guest room door, my voice hard. "We need to talk, now." Silence answered. I pounded again, louder. Still nothing. The call was made. A simple story of being locked out of a room in my own house. An hour later, a compact older man in a utilitarian gray uniform arrived. I offered no unsettling context, just the locked door. His tools made short work of the mechanism. A few tense minutes, a final click, and the door swung open. My stomach clenched violently. The room was empty, yet profoundly disturbed. It held the ghost of its former arrangement, but the bed was now jammed into a far corner. The desk lay overturned. The chair toppled onto its side. The dresser had been dragged inexplicably to the room's center. Deep gouges scarred the floorboards, evidence of the heavy dragging I'd heard. On the disheveled bed lay the single bag he'd carried. Open, vacant, no clothes, no toiletries, nothing. My mind felt dangerously close to short-circuiting. Where was he? The window remained securely locked from within. No breach, no escape route visible. The locksmith shot me a baffled glance, accepted his payment, and departed, blessedly incurious. I moved through the violated space, a trespasser in my own home. Under the bed, behind the displaced dresser, inside the closet, nothing. How had he vanished? Where could he have gone? I looked down at my trembling hands, felt the frantic pulse in my wrists. Relief warred with utter disorientation. How does a person simply dematerialize? Then I saw it. faint scratch marks marring the wood around the closet doorknob, as if someone had clawed at it, desperate to get in, or perhaps out. I pulled it open, empty save for a few skeletal hangers and a film of dust, but a faint, sour odor clung to the air, the unmistakable smell of stale sweat. A shiver traced my spine. I retrieved the bag from the bed, upended it. Nothing. Utterly empty. No identifying marks, no tags. The inner pockets were ripped. No wallet, no scrap of identity. A deliberate erasure. It made no sense. After a long moment, I carried the baffling object outside to the curbside bin and consigned it to the trash. For the remainder of that day, I remained within the house's uneasy walls, waiting, watching for a return that never materialized. The mechanics of his departure, his spectral passage through locked doors, these remain utter enigmas. New locks now fortify the front and back doors. The guest room window is securely nailed shut from the inside. I've scoured every inch of this small house. No hidden panels, no feasible crawl spaces, no basement, no accessible roof. He vanished without a trace, yet the conviction lingered, chillingly, that some part of him might still inhabit the hidden spaces. That night, a heavy dresser barricaded my bedroom door, a flashlight clutched near my pillow. Sleep was a shallow, hunted thing. Every nocturnal groan of the house jolted me awake, eyes wide in the dark. Time has passed since then. The guest room remains untenanted, a sealed chamber holding its secrets. Sometimes, in the deepest hours, phantom sounds echo, a scrape of wood on wood, hesitant footsteps in the hall. I still leap from bed, flashlight beam cutting the darkness, heart pounding for a confrontation that never comes. There is never anyone there. But the memory, the slow turn of the handle in the dark, the groaning hinges, that ragged, unseen breath, it's indelible. I feel its phantom touch on my neck when the house falls quiet. Who he was, the purpose of his unsettling visitation, how he moved like smoke through solid barriers, why he remained a faceless presence. These questions hover, unanswered. This much, however, is certain. Those nights irrevocably altered this space for me. My small sanctuary feels breached, haunted by a presence that, though unseen in its departure, never truly left. Now, locks are always turned, bolts always shot. And each night, a chair is wedged firmly beneath my bedroom doorknob. A flimsy defense, perhaps, but I cannot bear the thought of waking, ever again, to those slow, heavy footsteps approaching in the dark.